stones. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third a chalcedony, the fourth an emerald. I don't know if you noticed there. Now he says jasper, but then and sapphire, but then a chalcedony, meaning that's a singular piece of stone that's being put. The fourth an emerald. Now it doesn't say how thick any of these foundations are, but if those foundations are even just through the middle, uh, I guess what you'd call square of that, then it's 1,500 by 1,500 miles. So, if I just break out I mean, it's 1,500 miles squared. But I mean, multiply that out. But an emerald, like a singular emerald. That's I don't. There's no way to describe that. You're talking an unbelievable size that it would take the God who said that the earth is my footstool to say that about an emerald. Uh, Verse 20, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth sardis, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth a topaz, the tenth a chrysoprasus, the 11th a jacinth, the 12th an amethyst. And so he gives you the distinction there on several of these that it's a singular cut out piece of stone that goes into that. And I have at least, I guess if you're watching online, I don't have pictures up here because most of those stones, I mean, other than like an emerald, I couldn't even tell you what color it was just because I don't know my stones. Maybe like I probably, you ladies are more of the geologists in the room than, it's like, what a ruby would look like or something like that. Um, and so we'll take a look or kind of talk about these stones here a little bit. These stones are in the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., and they're laid out and they match the stones on the breastplate in the Old Testament. And there are 12 stones to match each one of the 12 tribes. And so we've listed them up here. And so I've got on the board and over here which tribe each of those stones goes with. Now, interestingly enough, I was watching, and I didn't go looking for this. It just happened upon an interview where somebody was talking about just how amazing your Bible is. That these 12 stones are spoken of by the Apostle John. These 12 specific stones are talked about. Now, you could look, and I probably mentioned, and probably erroneously several times, where I couldn't remember which 12 stones they were, and maybe even included a diamond or a ruby in there erroneously. But there was a guy, and he was talking about just how unique those 12 stones are, and the fact that a ruby and a garnet and a diamond is not listed amongst those 12 stones. It wasn't until the 1600s and more recently in the 1830s where scientists began to discover something about stones and particularly light. And so if you've got sunglasses, most people, familiar with polarized sunglasses, right? And the reason that you can see through polarized sunglasses is because let's say that they're slit like this, right? And so they're only letting through light that is coming across this vertical way through those slits, right? So I don't know if you've ever noticed this, if you've got on polarized sunglasses and you're driving down the road, do you ever notice somebody else's or even your own windshield, right? If you look at your windshield or your side window in any modern vehicle, you'll notice that you'll see like a kind of a gray blotchy pattern, but you don't see it when you take your sunglasses off because there is a polarization, a slight polarization in those side windows that you can't see until you put on polarized sunglasses. And it's because it's polarized the other way. And so you can have polarized vertical or you can have polarized horizontal. Now, this same thing ends up happening with wind and airplanes. A really smooth flight will have air that has laminar flow. That means it's smooth air. You can do the same thing with water, right? And water pouring out of a hose or whatever, and you can. I mean, it's really kind of freaky when you see laminar flow water because it looks like it's not even moving. It looks like it's ice, but it's actually flowing water, and that's that laminar quality to either air or water. Well, that same quality actually exists with light. And whenever you do both sets of polarization, you have the vertical slit and the horizontal slit. The only light that gets through there is what they call pure light. That's the only light that would make it through that crosshatch of double polarization is pure light. And so what they did and I don't know if they came across this quality of anisotropic and isotropic jewels. And basically it's what those jewels look like under that kind of light. And what they found is that anisotropic stones, whenever you put them through pure light or put pure light through them, it doesn't matter what color that stone was, when you put pure light through it, it makes all the light coming through the other side makes all the colors of the rainbow. Now, if you take an isotropic jewel or stone and you put pure light through it, it turns black. And diamonds, rubies, and garnets, although beautiful, when you put pure light through them, they turn pitch black. Every one of those 12 stones is anisotropic. When you put pure light through them, what comes out on the other side is the most it amplifies the color that comes out on the other side. I didn't know that until like 3 days ago. And I just thought that was cool because I wasn't looking for that information. And here we are, literally a couple of days before I was going to go over these stones, I come across this interview where this guy is saying, listen, the Apostle John, who wrote that in Revelation chapter 21, do you think he knew about anisotropic versus isotropic stones? He wouldn't have known if you told him, pick 12 stones, make sure they're all anisotropic. Well, he wouldn't have had the mechanism to even produce pure light, to even test it, to make sure that the light going through the stones came out the way that he wanted. The only one who knew about that quality of those 12 stones was the Lord who told him to write it down. And that gives you, it's what's kind of neat about it, other than just even the visual concept that those 12 stones produce more than just being precious stones and having 1,500 miles squared, who knows how thick of that, of each of those, but the fact that they have a quality to themselves that is special and unique, it's kind of mind-boggling because you and I, let's just be honest, if we were picking out 12 stones, I probably would have picked diamonds, rubies, and garnets, right? And the Lord says, no, I don't care about that. He said, I care about the light that's going through it. And when you start looking at this and what we'll come across later, let me see if I can go ahead and take you to that verse. If I can find it here real quick. Um, yeah, in verse 23 of this same chapter, it says, and the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine in it, not on it, in it, for the glory of God did lighten it. Well, what kind of light do you think the glory of God puts out? It'd be pure light. This is not like every other, I mean, you can see, a city at night lights up. This is a city it is lit from the inside because the glory of God is in it. What comes out of it, I mean, it is a light unlike anything else that you've ever seen. Right? It's not just big. It, the beauty of it is the light that's emanating from it based upon the jewels and stuff that he made it with. Um, you ever, I mean, it's interesting. I've gone with Caitlin and we go garage selling and thrift store and we'll go to Olathe and Overland Park and those kinds of areas. And there's a couple of subdivisions that we'll get into. And every one of those subdivision, in that subdivision, every house in that subdivision I mean, a millionaire owns every house in that subdivision. They're multi million dollar homes. And what's interesting to me is oftentimes you look at a house and what maybe the number that's impressive about it is the square footage. But I don't know if it's just kind of older I get, like what's more interesting to me anymore is what kind of material is it made out of, you know? Um, I don't know. I was watching this video the other day, and they were talking about how German homes are built versus how American homes are being built, and you get a lot of $700,000 homes, but they're basically cardboard, right? They're just and so a storm come through and just knock down all these big dollar homes, but they're not made out of anything. They're just mass manufactured and they're big, but they're kind of just twigs and everything that looks stable about them is fake, right? It looks like a brick house, but really that brick is a facade, right? It looks strong, but it's not really strong, right? It's got a lot of rooms and walls, but the walls aren't thick, right? It's really big but cheap. It looks good, but it's really nothing, right? It's ultimately, I mean, a lot of it's just trash. And so what's really cool about this is that my first thought about New Jerusalem is just how big it is. The Lord says, that ain't even the coolest part, man. He said, uh, and then my next thought is, oh, okay, what is it made out of? And you think pure gold. And he says, man, uh, that ain't even all of it. The foundations themselves, oh yeah, they're precious stones. He said, that's not even the coolest part about them. It's the quality that comes through because of the light that shines through it. And it gets, the more you study your Bible, and this is just an example of that, the more depths there are to just what the Lord has going on. And I'm sure that it goes deeper even than me talking about anisotropic versus isotropic and all of that kind of stuff. But that's just one more thing to that, which I think is cool. But emerald, emerald. Uh, these aren't necessarily in the order that they're given here, but it's by itself, it's a green stone, and that symbolizes Judah. And it's found in South America and Mexico. Cortez fell through jealousy over an emerald, and he gave his wife for, but or got for his wife. You got a sapphire, and a sapphire is a blue stone, and that symbolizes Simeon. And and it's found in North Carolina, Persia, and Wales. And then you have a sardonyx. So a lot of people probably know an emerald and a sapphire. I wouldn't have, if you showed me a sardonyx, I wouldn't have known what it was. And so if you want to later, you could pull up the video of this because I've got pictures of all of the stones. And it's got a stripe to it. It's got orange and red and white. Um, and so it's a sardonyx. Um, and it's a red and white stone, and it symbolizes Dan. And it's often called an onyx stone. It's where you get just the last part of that word. You take the sard off, and you get just the onyx stone. Okay. And then we come down to a chalcedony. And Raymond came up to me last week because he was looking at that stuff. He's like, "Is that how you pronounce that?" Probably not, but that's how I pronounce it. It could be chalcedony or something. I don't know. I'll probably pronounce it wrong, but it's a white translucent stone, and it symbolizes Levi. It's also sometimes again called an onyx stone as well, and it's found in Iceland and of all places to me in the New Hebrides, which is Vanuatu today. It just looking at the stone here myself, it looks a lot like, oh, you ever see these people that find what looks just like a rock and then they'll break it in half, and it's just this amazing looking stone. And so this is the picture I've got here. It's kind of a it's kind of a white or pale blue color, and like kind of like a geode, like when you break open a geode. So I've never, for the life of me, figured out how they know to break open that. I bet they just film themselves breaking open 1,000 rocks, and they just edit it down so that it looks like they just pick out the right rock every time. The only reason I know about a topaz, I guess, is kind of silly, but you see 12 stones here, and I don't know if these are the same 12 stones that are used for birthstones. I don't know if it's the same 12, but I think not the same 12. Some of them are, I know, because topaz is November, and that's I don't know. I always feel like it's kind of weird to have a birthstone. Like, man, what all do you need, right? Do you need a birth stone? Who came up with the birth stone? I don't know. There's just so many different things that everybody's got to have. What's your constellation? Well, why you gotta have what a weird thing to have. And everybody knows theirs, right? I don't know, it's just weird. But topaz, it's a kind of a light yellow or orange stone, and it symbolizes Issachar. And it's found on an island in the Red Sea. I don't know how many of you know what a chrysolite looks like. And if you go and you Google image them, you're going to find that a lot of these stones have different colors, or are known for being different colors, but that doesn't mean that they might be known for one color, but it doesn't mean that they don't show up as another. But chrysolite is a gold stone, and it symbolizes Gad. And it's Oh, it's said that some of them are so brilliant that one was found in the 14th century that it would shine under a cloth. It would just somehow it emanate light even through fabric. And then burl, maybe you know what a burl looks like, but it's some of these have similar colors to some of the other stones, but they'll be a different shade. So burl, I guess a lot of people characterize it like frozen fire. It's a listen. If you're a guy here, you say it's red, and if you're a lady here, like no, it's not red, it's burl. Like okay, my daughter takes after her mom for sure because she was having a conversation. I don't know how old she was. She wasn't very old at the time, I don't think, but she was talking with um, Pop Marty, and he described something as being pink, and she corrected me. She said, "No, that's blush." Oh, okay, pink to me. And so I look at this here and say, "Oh, his burl is red," but some people, no, that's frozen fire. Um, Sardis is a brownish red stone, and it symbolizes Naphtali. And then jacinth, and it's a darker or a dusky red stone, and it symbolizes Joseph. And then you have an amethyst, and it's a light purple crystal, and it symbolizes Benjamin. And I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this one right either. Chris Chrysoprasus, Chrysoprasus, something. Um, and I think some of them show up a little bit differently, but it's a golden green stone. And I'm reading through these descriptions, and these are descriptions that Doc gave for them. And I thought, how do you get a golden green stone? And so then I did a Google image search, and it is. It's green. It looks like, oh, jade. The green of it looks like jade, but it looks like somebody has taken gold and just speckled it all through it. And it's a wild looking kind of stone, and it's green and gold. And go ahead. Joseph, what color did you say it was? Joseph, it's a dusky jacinth. It's a really, really deep dark red. Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, when you look at it, if you look at the picture that I've got here, it is a blood red, a dark blood red color. So that's interesting. And then the last one I've got is jasper, and it's got a lot of transparent qualities to it. But with the image that I looked up, jasper comes out as like there's not like a set color for jasper because it's connected to what looks like it's always mixed in with a bunch of other stuff. Um, Again, it makes sense if I had the pictures up here to show you. And I tried to look at several images of each one just to try to find something. But it's a transparent crystal that symbolizes Reuben. And like I said, at least from what I'm told, all of those are anisotropic, meaning when you put pure light through them and you get a good cut of that stone, what comes out on the other side is not the color of the stone itself, but it's all of the colors of the prism. So it's a Sardis. Um, yep. Again, I don't trust my pronunciation of it. Sardis it's kind of a brownish red stone, almost kind of orangey. If I get super, I could get my wife up here and she could look at these and she's like, no, that's not how you describe that. So I, I don't understand. I don't understand how, we go and look at these paint swatch walls and somebody has to name these things. And I don't know how they name them. I was like, if it was up to me, it's like, well, you can't just call that gray. That's a blue gray. But it's got to have a neat name to it. So it's, you know, fall depression. It's okay. I don't know how they name these things.
I'm colorblind. Like I could see your shirt as gray, green, or brown.
See, and I thought it was tan. Oh,
I'm colorblind from that spectrum.
yeah. That's
I failed many a test.
yeah.
I don't
I, I was gonna say something, but we're recording, so I'll let it go. But good for you being colorblind, Marty. But when you start trying to picture that, it's hard to imagine what God's city looks like. And what an eye-splitting spectacle it'd be. No wonder Paul said this in 2 Corinthians 12. It says, "For I am in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to depart and be with Christ, which is far better." Because that city's up there. And that place is in the third heaven right now. He's prepared it. And man, he's ready to send it down. And you know, after he was caught up to the third heaven in 2 Corinthians 12, the rest of his life he lived all out for God. What? Man, get back there. Um, I don't know if you've ever just looked at something like, man, I just don't know that I can take my eyes off of that. That's just what a thing. You know, I think about maybe being a kid and taking a family vacation and driving through a city for the first time and seeing a skyscraper up close for the first time. It's like, man, that thing is it's just hard to believe how big that is. And it no comparison at all. Somebody have, but
Do you think these are foundations like on top of each other, or do you think they're like levels? Like one is single level, one is
well, I don't know, and that's a good question because I've tried to now most of the time whenever people it, the only time you're going to see that shape is if you look at Ruckman's Apocalypse book and see where he drew it. And so if you go and you try to get on the internet and try to find a picture of that city, they're always going to draw it as a great big cube. And so they're going to put all those foundations on the bottom. Now, if I was putting those foundations somewhere, and I've drawn this kind of translucently, but I'd put them,
yeah.
across the middle there you know, that there's some thickness there, but I don't know. I don't even know that that's how it goes because it could be this cuts through in and this one cuts through in because, and granted, if you're listening to this online, that nothing I'm going to say is going to make any sense because you can't see anything. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of those edges. Now, granted, obviously this edge going this way and this edge coming this way are really on the same plane. All four of those would be. So I think what's possible here, though, is that if any of you ladies look at that, you know, if you've got a nice cut of a diamond on your ring there, and you notice, you know, that it has a cut to it, that it's possible that that those 12 foundations aren't just all on the same plane, you know, flat to each other or stacking like this, but that they actually come in from, you know, different angles. Because that's what's really unique about this city is that it's a very large three-dimensional and three-dimensional shape. Whereas most cities, the way that they're laid out are just really obviously two-dimensional. It doesn't mean that they don't go up, but this whole thing is three-dimensional. And it, to a certain aspect, I know this maybe sounds strange to say, but I don't even know that it necessarily says, and I think I'll get to a spot here where Doc offers an alternative kind of hypothesis, because I normally think of this as New Jerusalem touching down at Jerusalem, that this point here actually touches the city of Jerusalem and kind of hovers above it. Now, it's possible that John sees it from an exceeding high mountain, but that it never actually touches Earth, that it's like a satellite that's in geosynchronous orbit around Earth. Well, if that's the case, and it stays close to Earth but is in space, well, up, down, left, and right really don't have a whole lot of meaning there. You know, so to say, hey, this is the bottom, and so that's the foundation, that doesn't make as much. It's not as necessary. So a foundation could be coming in, the floor could be kind of from anywhere, if that makes any sense. And that's just kind of me trying to imagine more than just the obvious, I guess, because Lord's a complicated guy, and um, I don't know. This is again kind of going off on a different tangent here, but when we start talking about just dimension in general, you know, we have, you know, because I'm going to be teaching geometry here in a second, in a couple of days. But a point, when we start talking about geometry, has location, but it has no dimension. It takes up no space. So when you talk about points, lines, and planes, a point, although I've drawn it, whenever I talk about a point, it takes up no space. It is purely a location. Now, if we make a line, that line has one dimension to it. It has no thickness, but it has length. That's the only dimension that it has. Now, if we make something like this is that squared is two-dimensional, has length and width, okay, that we can define. Now, because I'm going to try to give an example of a three-dimensional object on a two-dimensional surface, right? This would be an example of a cube, and that has three dimensions. It has length, width, and height. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm going to do a good job of explaining this, but although, like I said, I'm not going to do a great job of explaining it, but it looks, the best way to describe it, it would be like a cube inside of a cube, where the points of each of the cube on the inside go to the points, the corresponding points on the larger cube that it's inside of. That's called a tesseract. And what it's supposed to define is a four-dimensional object. Now, here's the problem. We're three-dimensional creatures. So we can't perceive a four-dimensional object. He said, why even bring it up? Because it's very likely that if there's a fourth dimension, the Lord perceives the fourth dimension. So why wouldn't he make a city that has more characteristic to it than what you and I would perceive in a fallen state right now? Right? One of these days you're going to have a perfect body. Yeah. And that's going to be your habitation. So my point is that, and what I'm telling you right now is not something I've thought about until right now. That if you're going to have a body like unto his body, yeah, why do you think that it would have, that it would only be able to perceive in the three dimensions that you perceive right now? If you look at a spectrum of light, right? You ever look at a light spectrum chart? On that chart is X-rays and gamma rays and beta rays, and and then if it was 6 foot long, right? And we just talked about the entire spectrum of light. The portion of light that you can perceive in those 7 colors would be maybe 3 inches of a 6 foot scale of light. Would you imagine that Christ in a perfect body could perceive the entire light spectrum? Okay. So if you perceive the world around you in 3 dimensions, and let's say, I would maybe even go so far as to say just the Lord being who he is, I bet it's not even just 4 dimensions. If I had to guess, I'd say there's 7 dimensions. And now, does that have anything to do with the foundations and how they're laid? I don't know. But I would say that that city is probably more than what you and I would perceive it to be even now. The Lord's giving you some descriptors and trying to give you a ballpark, but it's probably more than that. And that's why, you know, whenever he says, in my Father's house are many mansions, how to define that? And I'm not trying to just get super deep on you, but it's probably more than what you think. So, anyway, that probably didn't answer your question, but as far as do I think that they're all stacked on top of each other? Maybe, but and maybe not.
That fourth dimension, kind of like we look through a glass darkly, but then face to face, that soul's awareness of the spiritual realm.
Yeah. Well, and if like what we talked about with this shape of this city, a lot of people make that to be a cube, but Doc takes it and it has some of the same qualities as a cube, but basically and I think this is called an octadeca. Let's see, what is it called? Um, I think it's called an octatetrahedron, something like that, because it's 4 and 8. Okay, 4 and 8. So basically, what this has is it has 8 faces, um, but but centered around four sides, something like that. Whereas a regular cube, and the word for a cube is not, I mean, there's more than one way to say cube in geometry. Um, Basically, what you're flipping between this and a standard cube is this has 6 faces, 8 points. This has 8 faces, but 6 points. So it flips the number of points and faces. Now, what if we took this over here, this representation of a 4-dimensional object, and did the exact same thing with it? And I don't, I might be able to do that if I try real hard. Not that anybody's asking me to. Something like that, and then I do something similar. And then we ran it out. You end up with something that's poorly drawn. But then I would be curious to know if we could get 12 foundations out of that. Does that make sense? And I'd have to sit down and actually kind of play with that, but um, I'm just like, I know you get to thinking about geometry and like geometry is really boring, but when you get the geometry and you get geometry and the Bible together, it was, to me it gets really cool. Like the fact that some of this stuff, it it allows you to maybe see the Bible in a way that a lot of people don't look at it. And I guess my argument to you would be is that when you look at the Bible through the lens of what you know and what you understand, a lot of times you'll see stuff that I won't see, right? Those of you that know farming, I talk to David all the time and the stuff that he brings up about sheep because he spends his time around sheep and whenever he reads in the Bible about sheep, he's got a different understanding about sheep than what I understand about sheep. I read about sheep on the face of it. I know what a sheep looks like. I know what a lamb looks like, but I don't know how it behaves or why it behaves that way. But he'll understand something about shepherds that I wouldn't understand. So all I'm trying to do for you is, maybe as boring as it sounds, is trying to bring my experience with some geometry and see if that adds a little bit to what we're looking at here. All right. Let's see. But needless to say, it's a spectacle. Um, let's see. Doc talks about it here. He says, I got a private theory that Paul Paul was a suicidal maniac for Jesus. I don't know that for sure, but any man who lived the way he did wasn't trying to stay alive. If a man was trying to be careful, he couldn't have gotten into the trouble that Paul did. Paul got into so much trouble for a man who was trying to stay alive. And you could go to 2 Corinthians 11:20 through 29, but what you're going to read is three shipwrecks, a night and a day in the deep, and fastings often, and perils of his countrymen, and perils of strangers, and how many times he was beaten with rods and whipped, and all that other kind of stuff. When you go back and you read the Acts account of him getting stoned at Lystra, what you find is that if you match that up with 2 Corinthians 12, when he's caught up to the third heaven, and understand that those are the same event, what you see is directly after pulling himself out of a pile of rubble, he walks right back into the city of Lystra where they had just hauled him out and to their knowledge had killed him. Why? Because he saw that city. He saw Jesus Christ. He saw the third heaven. And he said, I'll go back there. And the Lord wouldn't let him. It's like, no, you can stay down there. Paul was caught up to the third heaven and saw this thing. And then God sent him back down. And talk about a change of scenery. And he was standing there 1 minute looking at a city 1,500 miles high, 1,500 miles wide, and 1,500 miles long, shining like, well, not shining like a diamond, shining like something you've never seen, made out of pure solid gold, transparent, so that your eye looks right through it. 15 or 20 miles in depth, with gates of a single giant pearl 90 feet high in the air, perfect spheres. And then foundations 1,500 miles long and 1,500 miles wide. out of topaz, emerald, sardonyx, jasper, all of it. That thing was glittering and flashing in front of Paul's face. And inside that city was no pain, no heartache, no sorrow, no death, no tears, no taxes. And then back Paul went from there back down to Asia Minor and landed on a dirty road at the foot of a camel. And that's quite a change. Goes right back in. He's wakes up underneath a pile of rocks, and he's back in the same century he started in with no indoor plumbing and no hot water, right? No refrigerator and no microwave, right? No food delivery service and and a terrible headache. That's right. And I'll bet they had to take Paul out to the battlements of heaven and throw him out. I bet an angel had to toss him out. I bet I bet it took a couple of them, to get him now. He's got to take him back, kick him out by angelic force to get him back down here. No wonder he said this in 2 Corinthians 5. He says, "We are confident, I say, and willing rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord." Why? Because to be present with the Lord is to be there. And man, that is not like anything any of you have, or myself, have ever seen or ever even imagined, nor can imagine. And believe me, I've looked up, artist renditions and artist renderings, and what do they think it looks like? And I've even here's the crazy thing, with artificial intelligence now, and you can get on some of these AI things and type in and say, I want you to make me an image, and I want it to look like this. And I've tried to be as descriptive as possible. I've given it scriptural references. I gave it geometric references, and it won't make that. It won't draw it. If you try to describe it as, I want you to take a pyramid with a base of 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles and have it go 1,500 miles up. And I want you to take another pyramid with the same dimensions and invert it directly and fit those two together. It won't draw it. At least it wouldn't 4 months ago. Because I tried and tried. I spent way too much time trying to get it to do it. Eventually, what I was able to do is I had to tell it, I said, I need you to make a graph with an X, a Y, and a Z axis. And then just step by step. I mean, like you're talking to somebody who didn't know anything. I needed to do this, I needed to go up like this, and I need another one. And all I could do was but it wouldn't make it look like a city. I eventually did get it to make the shape, but that's as much as I could get it to do. Even when I found out what the name of the shape was, I said, make that. Because like I said, I might be wrong in calling it an octatetrahedron or whatever. I'd have to look it back up again, but I don't know. There's something about that AI. It doesn't want to make that picture. So anyway, all right. We'll stop there. We'll pick it up with 21:21 next.